Hey guys, stocks time. So I've made the sales to pay for my tax bill. So the headline figure is quite a bit lower. Sold about 14,500, which I will come back to what I've sold. But the performance-wise, actually up about 2,000 for the week. So not too bad. Some of that has come from here, about £800. Partly in the gold and silver. Chinese tech sort of not doing too bad. Bar in the positive now. I have made a decision though to sell Wheaton precious metals. Sort of not all that happy about the sort of royalty companies at the moment. Just seem a little bit of a high valuation with sort of gold and silver where it is. It's nice that you're not too worried about costs. You just get the revenue from other miners. But yeah, it seems like you're paying a fair bit for that. I think I'd rather just sort of get into crypto a little bit more. So I sold that and split the proceeds between Argo and Hive. And I may buy back into Wheaton sort of later on if the crypto goes up. But yeah, I thought Argo and Hive both sort of on a fair drop. Hive in particular this week. They're sort of longer term, a little bit more sketchy than Argo because they're sort of largely in Ethereum, and sort of they're moving to proof of stake. So yeah, Hive will lose a fair bit of their revenue. I expect they'll move to another blockchain, another coin, but yeah, that's less desirable than Ethereum. They're obviously raking it in at the moment, but yeah, Argo sort of being just Bitcoin is just a little bit nicer, a bit more secure. So I thought both sort of a short-term-ish trade, if you like, sort of swing trade. Maybe hold them both for 3-6 months, and if they go up, then I'll probably sell sort of the amount that I bought now a little bit earlier. So a little bit of trading, if you like, but yeah, I thought it was worth it. So looking at Trading212, that is down about £400, not a huge amount. ARK continuing to carry on downwards. Cathy Wood sort of making all sorts of excuses that the genomics pie's down. Quite happy about that, really, if that carries on down and down, and be able to make a reasonable investment in that for sort of the next 5 years, maybe. I expect some of those will probably go bust in the downturn, maybe in the next 6 months, but there's 50 of them. REITs sort of taken a fair bit of a hit this week. Argo, as I say, down at 83p. Very nice price. ETP actually up a little. Most of the REITs have followed down a little bit, 2 or 3%. Nothing too much. Sylvania back above £1, not too bad. Rhodium up about $2,500 since the new year. So it does seem like the orders for the cars are probably starting to ramp up, and the sort of platinum price has been trickling up fairly slowly, but I expect this is mostly down to rhodium. So that's pretty good, or sort of sentiment that rhodium will be bringing a bit more cash. So yeah, that's done quite well for the week. And yeah, most of the other REITs, as I say, slightly down. So the invest account, yes, so 14,500 sold. Just sort of show you the big movers as well. ASOS 7% up on the week. They announced sort of some not so good results really, but the sort of guidance didn't look too bad, and I think the whole thing just is probably a little bit better than people were expecting. Boohoo sort of came out with some fairly poor results, and yeah, ASOS I think still growing, still sort of growing in America. The Topshop sort of integration seems to be going reasonably well, and yeah, I think people were just expecting it to be a little bit worse than it was really. So they've done quite well. Barrett Development are quite a bit down. This is the UK cladding issue since the Grenfell Tower fire. So they're going to now have to foot the bill to replace a lot of the cladding on their buildings. Government have sort of enforced that, so different builders get hit different amounts depending on how much they've got. Taylor Wimpey have been hit harder, but yeah, Barrett have been hit quite a bit, but it's a one-time event. It's not going to affect them sort of long term. Not a huge amount of other moves here. Glencore above £1 now. £4, sorry. So that's going well. Copper still is going to be ramping up, I would have thought, for a good while. Intel up slightly. So sales, I've sold the Europe ETF. Didn't really think that was going to move drastically in the next few months, so sold that. Same with the water ETF, legal and general water ETF. Yeah, sort of selling out of those, and then if crypto sort of goes up in the next few months, 6 months maybe, then I would probably just buy back in. But that seemed sort of reasonable way to just get a bit of cash, sort of relatively risk-free. I sold the clean energy, iShares Clean Energy, so slightly different reason. That was sort of down about £800, I think. So get a little bit of tax loss harvesting from that to offset next year's tax bill. And you look at it, and they're sort of obviously very high sort of PE companies, being sort of clean energy and sort of an emerging technology. They're growing, and I just think sort of with the sort of QE coming off now, interest rates going up, I still think growth stocks are going to get hit reasonably hard. So yeah, sold that. Probably buy back in later on, especially if it drops. And I also sold the video games ETF, the VanEck video games ETF. The more I look at it, sort of, it's just not really that much video games. Sort of top holding is Tencent. Obviously, they have an awful lot of sort of video games on their portfolio, but they're sort of heavily in, a big part of the revenue is WeChat and that sort of thing. So yeah, they're sort of half video games, half not. And then number 2 and 3 is Nvidia and AMD, which, a small part of Nvidia really is video games. A lot of it is sort of data centers and industrial sort of, big server chips and that sort of thing. So that's not video games. And then AMD, their chips are in the consoles, but sort of a big part of them now is sort of PC CPUs, server CPUs, and that sort of thing. So that's your top 3. I think it's about over 20% to those 3. So yeah, just didn't really see it as that video games really. Obviously, I don't really want to hold Nvidia or AMD. I sort of made my thoughts on them before. Very, very high PE. Don't really want to have those in this sort of growth sell-off. So yeah, that went. I may buy back into it later on. I may just sort of pick the video games companies that I want to hold, really. Unless we have a major sort of crash and AMD and Nvidia start coming down a fair bit. Process up quite a bit. I think this is probably the thought of the money coming in from Tencent selling. They sell JD, or part of JD.com, and they're also selling C Limited. So Tencent has sort of been a bit up and down on that news, but Process obviously get that cash, and they're looking like they're going to use some of it for buybacks. So yeah, they've had a fair old move. Still trying to close the gap between their 10-cent valuation, so maybe some more buybacks can do that. Rio Tinto continuing on up. Iron ore doing sort of reasonably well, started trickling up, but aluminium also sort of powering ahead. It's up sort of, I think, 10 to 15%, maybe towards 15% in the last month. So that's doing really well. I think people forget about the aluminium side of Rio. So that's good. Shell, another 5% up on the week. So this is sort of, well, new highs for me on Shell. Was at £18, so that's really good. Oil carrying on up. Yeah, not quite at the absolute highs it's been, but doing really well. And gas up a hell of a lot, especially in Europe. So yeah, Shell do well. And Stellantis 6.5% on the week. Not seen too much news on this, but I think just sort of sentiment picking up a little bit. The Amazon deal was sort of fairly good news last week. So yeah, they're not doing too bad. TSMC 14%. This isn't sort of earnings, it seems, but just more announcements of them spending an absolute fortune. I think they spent $30 billion last year on sort of new factories and expanding, and they've just announced they're going to be spending $40 to $44 billion this year. So just ploughing the money into extending their lead. So yeah, doing pretty well on them now. Was sort of hoping to buy back in the sort of $115 range, but looks like that has gone for a good while now. And then, yeah, so as I say, Taylor Wimpey got hit pretty hard, harder than Barrett's for the cladding issue. But we'll take that as a sort of short-term hit. Tesla not doing too much. Tyson up a little bit. Vale, similar to Rio, really. And yeah, that's about it, really. So, interesting week. Obviously, the big sales. I need to hopefully sort of be reinvesting all of this in over the next few months. But we'll see where we go. So, leave your thoughts in comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.